What's up, guys? It's very important to know the why. If you've ever gone to church or heard a sermon that had any meaning, or been around religious people, you've probably heard people say, don't sin. That's kind of Christianity 101, right? Do not sin or avoid sin. But why? Why avoid sin? And even, I think a question that we have to also answer is, what is sin? Which sin should I avoid? Which sin should I avoid? Do I avoid all sin? Are there only certain sins that I need to look out for? But I want to talk about the why. Why avoid sin? Number one, it is a temporary pleasure. Now, sin is fun. Sin is enjoyable. If it wasn't fun or enjoyable, we wouldn't do it. People wouldn't be addicted to it. But it is temporary. It is a short-term pleasure where it feels good in the moment or it feels good leading up to it. But then afterwards, it's not fulfilling. There's no follow-through. It makes us want to have it more and more. Probably one of the clearest one is impurity. I mean, there are memes about post-nut clarity. People have even said, do not make a big decision until you nut. There's something that happens when we look at pornography and we masturbate that we go afterwards like, what was I doing? What was I thinking? We start to have clarity. And these temporary urges, these temporary pleasures will drive us to do crazy things. You know there's truth in it and other people are experiencing it when memes are being made. It's a temporary pleasure, and so you do not make sacrifices for temporary pleasures. Number two is similar to the first one, but it grows and will dominate you. Because it is a temporary pleasure, because it does not fulfill and it leaves you wanting more and more, it will dominate you, and in some cases it takes over people's lives. I mean, with the impurity thing, it can take you down to very dark, damaging situations. I mean, there are brain scans showing that addiction to pornography actually physically alters your brain. We see that there are, Jerry, I don't know, the Subway guy, his pornography got very perverted and grew into where he was looking at child pornography. Now he's in jail. Think about alcohol, drugs. There are mugshots of people who, the years of abuse and doing drugs, what it has done to their life. Greed. I mean, people are doing terrible, terrible evils to others because of their greed. I mean, think about all the aid, all the money, all the food that goes to corrupt countries like Somalia. There's so much aid and so much help that's given to that country, but because of greed and because of corruption, it doesn't get to the people, and there are children starving to death. And that's not an isolated case. People do terrible things to other human beings because of greed. But it doesn't start out, people don't start out saying, you know what, I'm gonna end up selling people for money. It doesn't start out like that. It grows and it dominates. Another reason is that it hardens your heart. And so it's going to affect your relationship with God. Now, we know that God will not leave us. God will not desert us. God loves us regardless of if we follow him or not. But we can leave God. Think about King Saul. King Saul was chosen. He was appointed by God to be the leader of the king of Israel, and his heart was hardened. Same thing with Judas. Judas, man, and that's another example of it growing and dominating you, his greed. But these things, your heart gets hardened and you don't care. You stop caring. That's why people are able to do atrocious and horrendous things to other people, is because their heart gets hardened. Another reason to avoid sin is the cost is too great. I mean, as Christians, we understand and we know that Jesus had to be flogged and crucified and died so that we could be freed from these sins. And the cost is too great. Every time I watch the Passion of the Christ or I read the Passion Week story in the Gospels, man, I go, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. These temporary pleasures are not worth the sacrifice that Jesus went through so that I can be freed from it. There is a great cost to this. And when you keep that in perspective, it helps you to say no to these sins. And I'll end it with this one. The reason you need to avoid sin is because you are not created to sin. God did not create you to indulge your sinful nature. God did not create you to be a sinful being. God created you to be like His Son. God created you to be like Him. He created us in His image. When we are sinning, we are not living out our intended purpose. You were not created to indulge in these short-term pleasures. You were not created for this place. You're created for heaven. He created us to be with Him. I mean, that's what it was from the beginning. In Adam and Eve, He was walking with them. He was living with them. We were created to be with God. When you indulge in sin, when you go after sin, you are not living your intended purpose. God created you for greatness. God created you for glory. God created you to be with Him and to be like Him. Those are the whys for me. That's why I avoid sin. That's why I do not go after it. Now, I'm not perfect. I do still sin, unfortunately. And when I am tempted, or I do want to go after that temporary pleasure, or I do want to go after that sin, I have to go back to the why. I go back to these whys. Why should I not do it? So I hope this is helpful. I make videos every week to encourage people to live out their faith, to live out their intended purpose. If you want to be a part of that, please subscribe, hit that like button so this can be shared to other people. God is incredible and He has incredible plans for us. So I hope you guys are doing well. Until the next one, peace.